Close your eyes to hear the enchanted words of Dr. Seuss. At the far end of town, where the grickle grass grows, and the wind smells slow and sour when it blows, and no birds ever sing, excepting old crows, is the street of the lifted Lorax. And deep in the grickle grass, some people say, if you look deep enough, you can still see today where the Lorax once stood, just as long as it could, before somebody lifted the Lorax away. What was the Lorax, and why was it there? And why was it lifted and taken somewhere from the far end of town where the grickle grass grows? The old Onceler still lives here. Ask him. He knows. You can open your eyes now.
Longing for my people out there on their own, rooted so deeply in another land, so far away from home. Been many years, blood, sweat, and tears since that awful day. Chained and bound against the will, taken on.
I know some of y'all are sick of seeing my face up here. For those of you that have spent the day with me, I know you think that the convention's already started. You probably feel like you have an entire convention under your belt already with the business that we've conducted today. But in fact, this is the official opening ceremony of the Libertarian Party National Convention for 1993, and I'd like to welcome you all to that event, and this is also the keynote address. Welcome. And as any of you who know Bob Waldrop can probably attest to, this is going to be a wild and crazy event. It's a time for us to get inspired and have some fun, so let's get with it. Ladies and gentlemen, in gratitude for their service to the cause of liberty, we present the Libertarian Party of the United States past candidates for President and Vice President who are present with us tonight. Dr. John Hospers, Tony Nathan, David Berglund, Ed Clark, Jim Lewis, and Nancy Lord. We are also happy to have with us the Libertarian Party caucus of the New Hampshire legislature. Representative Don Gorman, the leader. Representative Calvin Warburton. Representative Finley Rothaus. And Representative Andy Borsa. But this is just the beginning. Join us in welcoming all the Libertarian Party elected officials present here tonight. May the day soon come when there are thousands of such dedicated people boosting the cause of liberty.
Well, my experience with the folks in Montana, and I've been there several times, is that they have that basic libertarian streak of independence, and that the Libertarian Party as a political organization in America today, with its growth rate and what it has to offer the American people, is exactly what most Montanans should be looking for. I believe in Montana, just as in the rest of the country, the general voter, or the general person who is just out there trying to make a living and make things happen for the better in his own community with his own family, is fed up with the Democrats and the Republicans and would like to have a vehicle which will work for his or her liberty at all times and all the issues. That's what the Libertarian Party is.
In Dr. Seuss's own words, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not.
And I'd like to tell a little story about this, about a group of people, just like us in many ways, that were trying to grow and were having problems. To give you an example of how this works, I've taken the liberty of borrowing it from M. Scott Peck's book. And in that, he talks about a monastery that was having trouble recruiting new members. And so in desperation, the head of the monastery, an abbot, and this shows you how desperate he was, went to visit the wise old rabbi in the woods. I mean, you got to be pretty desperate, right, to go across the lines. Just like we're kind of going to the Democrats and Republicans saying, what are they doing that we're not doing? And he went to visit this rabbi and said, what can I do to increase my membership? And the rabbi says, I really can't tell you much about that, but I do have something very important to tell you. He said, one of the members of your monastery is the next Messiah. And so when the abbot came back, as you might imagine, there was pandemonium in the monastery. Everybody wanted to know who it was. But the abbot didn't have that information because the rabbi couldn't tell him. And so they figured, well, we'll just keep on waiting, and in God's good time, we'll find out. But you know, it wasn't the same anymore, because the monks that had been bickering among themselves were a little nervous about bickering with each other now. After all, you didn't want to be saying nasty things about the next Messiah. Very dangerous. And you also, of course, had to consider that you might be the next Messiah. Which meant, of course, that you really should be taking care of yourself a little bit and maybe acting in a way that you wouldn't be ashamed of later if you found out you were the next Messiah. And so the atmosphere at the monastery slowly changed. Everybody started treating each other with extraordinary respect, just on the off chance, of course, they were dealing with the next Messiah. And eventually, as they got more and more into this pattern of extraordinary respect for each other, taking care of each other, watching over each other, and of course, gently correcting and discussing with each other, a whole new atmosphere pervaded the monastery, and the villagers that picnicked in the forest began to look at the monastery and look at how the monks interacted with each other and said, what do they know that we don't? What secret do they have that we don't? The people that we want to follow are the ones that can take us to peace and plenty and happiness. And even when the monks don't have much, they all have it because they take care of each other, they share. They're pleasant to each other, and they're so happy. What do they know that we don't? And so they started going and questioning the monks. And eventually, some of the young people decided that, well, even though they didn't totally understand, they wanted to be a part of this. And they would come and stay at the monastery, and eventually some of them joined. And the monastery grew and flourished, and they never did find out who was the next Messiah. I really enjoy this story because I feel that this is the part of our philosophy that we have missed. It is okay to be unselfish. It is okay to take care of others. Those are our customers. They're our friends.
This $1,500 is in memory of Eastern Airlines, Frontier, People Express, and all the other airlines that are going down in catastrophe because of all the government regulation of our industry, especially the FAA.
We oppose the harassment of churches by the We oppose the harassment of churches by the Internal Revenue Service through threats to deny tax-exempt status to churches that refuse to disclose massive amounts of information about themselves.
There was this case in central Montana where a SWAT team of 30 people descended, and I mean literally, they came down in helicopters, among other things, landed on this isolated ranch. I mean, there's no place in the continental or contiguous 48 as isolated as central Montana. We're talking less than 1 person per square mile. It's like West Texas or something. This place is empty. Instead of going to the local sheriff with charges that said these people have been poisoning eagles on their sheep ranch, let me go a little aside here. Practically every one of the alphabet soup agencies that we detest most now has its own SWAT teams. This includes the post office. I mean, it's really getting out of control, you know. But the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service sent its SWAT team to descend on these people. Here's this little old man, he's 74 years old in a wheelchair, breathing oxygen through a mask, and his frail little wife, and here come 30 people with machine guns out of the skies and up the road in jeeps and whatnot, you know, and descended on these people to decide if they in fact had been poisoning eagles and were therefore guilty of violating an Environmental Protection Agency law against it. They found a little poison. They didn't find much in the way of evidence. Really, it was kind of scanty. Some of the people said they'd heard them talking about doing it, and somebody said they found a dead eagle out there, but nobody ever saw anybody doing anything. There wasn't a whole lot of evidence And it really looked bad to have, you know, the local sheriff ignored while these feds just stormed the joint, one of the biggest raids Montana has ever seen on anything forever. You know, I mean, it was incredible. We thought this was a good case for FIJA. It came to trial in Billings, Montana on the 23rd of August, so it's not very long ago. And I called up Red and I said, you want to join us in the protest? Well, he hadn't done this kind of thing for quite a while. Well, maybe I can get some friends and, you know, I'll call a few people up and we'll do this and that and the other. So Don Doig and I sent out, we went through our mailing list and found people in the area and sent them memos and made phone calls, and Red did the same thing. And by the time we got there, we'd collected about 8 or 10 people. It wasn't a big deal. We surrounded the courthouse. We sat there with these things and handed them, again, everybody. Going in for a driver's license, we didn't care what it was. You know, we gave them one of these things. And yours truly managed to give one to a federal marshal, who promptly went up to tell the judge that there was these people out there doing this thing, you know. And of course, we'd done a little homework. We called Channel 2 and Channel 8 and the local radio and the local newspaper and all that stuff. And so by the time the marshal came back out with another marshal, they introduced themselves and said, the judge wants you to cease and desist. By now it was 8:45. We'd been there since 8 o'clock because 8 till 9 is when all the jury, you know, the people show up, you know, the pool. So I said, is that a court order? Do you want to see the judge, was the answer. I said, sure, can't beat that. So, but they didn't know as Red was around the bend talking to Channel 2 while I'm up talking to the judge, you know. I get up there, and after a few more motions were made by the defense and the prosecution regarding the case, they confiscated all my literature, which included the jury power information kit, a few copies of the latest issue of the FIJA Activist, the rest of these, and put them in a box and set it in the jury box. I could hardly stand it. The jury had not been selected yet, but just symbolically, it really made me smile. And then the marshals sternly advised me that I wasn't really under arrest quite, but I was strongly urged not to leave the building until I had seen the judge. But I said, but that's why I came here. I'm sure not going to leave the building until I see the judge, so I guess we agree. And soon enough, you know, the lady I'd seen, the court recorder, she'd been typing on that silent court recording machine while these motions and other things were being made. Without a word, she just came by and she grabbed a handful of stuff out of this jury box and went out someplace with it. I don't know where she took it. And then one of the marshals came up to me and said, well, we need a few copies for the defense and the prosecution. Take it away, have at it, you know. And the judge would have at it, you know. So by now the box is going down faster than we could ever have distributed it. And going to all the right people, you know. So then I got called into conference with the judge in the judge's chambers. And here sit the two marshals, the court recorder, the defense team, the prosecution team, and a couple of other hangers-on, and me. And the judge, you know, admonished me that he did not want to violate my right of freedom of speech. However, by this time it's like 9:15, so all the jurors are in there anyway, so I went along with the program, and he said, if you want to do this thing, you'll just have to take it across the street, because we can't have you doing it on the same block. This building uses up an entire block. We don't want you on the sidewalk, we don't want you on the porch, we don't want you on the first floor, the fifth floor, anywhere in the building. You'll have to take it somewhere else if you want your freedom of speech. By this time, Red had called a news conference across the street. So we got across the street from the courthouse, you know, and the cameras panned, you know, the Billings federal courthouse and, you know, U.S. federal courthouse in Billings. And we're, you know, with cameras, it makes you look like you're practically in the courthouse anyway, so the TV coverage was fabulous. It turns out that one of the channels the anchor newsman on that channel is the senator who introduced FIJA legislation in the Montana legislature last year. So he gave us about 7 minutes of the evening news. You know, and the other channel did a fabulous job, and they were not in any way connected with us. But the guy, you know, the anchor was obviously fascinated with the question, read the literature, did some homework, and did a marvelous report. The best thing they did was they did not question the validity of what we were saying. In both of the television shows, the reporters were saying they were out there telling jurors their rights. See, not saying, is it or isn't it a right, but here it is, and they were telling them, and the judge made them stop, you know. 2 days later, acquitted.
And we're going to start in our city councils, in our county commissions, in our assemblies, in our senates, in every public meeting in our community. And you're going to have to be there. People do not learn about Libertarian by what we write. I'm sorry, guys, I know you're all writers, but that isn't how they learn. They learn by our actions. They learn by what you and I do. They learn by what we say, and they learn by how we present it. So it's up to us to be present, to be at these meetings, and to stand up and give them something to look at and say, I believe like he does. I can do what he does. Or if this guy will lead me, I'll follow. We need to be those leaders. There's never a better time in the history of America to be a libertarian. The top leader of his country is working for us every day. This guy's proven our principles. We don't even have to open our mouths. We just have to be there to say, oops. This guy is showing what we believe. From everything he's done from the day he came in office, he's taught Americans beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can't believe Republicans and you sure can't believe Democrats. He's taught America that no matter what they say, it's baloney. He's taught them that you can't trust. So it's our job to teach them who they can trust. See,
I'd like all the people in this room who either have been or are right now an elected official of any kind, whether it's whatever it is. If you're an elected official, would you please stand up? No, keep standing up. Don't go away. If you're an elected official, please stand up. Remain standing. If you're an appointed official at every level, I don't care what it is, as long as it's government, appointed official, stand up. If you are a candidate or intend to be a candidate for any political or appointed office, would you please stand up? If you're a delegate to this convention, would you please stand up? If you published a paper or a news article or a news release, Libertarian Lines or whatever, if you were in the publishing end of this party, would you please stand up? Would anybody in this room who supports liberty, would they please stand up? I want you to look around. You're not standing alone. Take a look at all these people who are standing with you back to back in the different jobs that they do. Give yourself a big hand. This is the winning team right here. You're looking at it. Never mind all this divisiveness. This is togetherness. This is it. Keep on clapping. Join me in a song if you would. And the song goes like this. It's God bless America.
Therefore, a simplistic answer, a simplistic moral to the book that chopping trees is wrong simply will not do. We must chop some trees if we are going to survive. The question is, which trees to chop and who decides? In fact, I think this is what my entire speech is about. Which trees to chop and who decides?